Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Saltworks podcast. I'm your host, Hallie Dye. Merry Christmas. It's December. We're so excited you're here. I can't wait to share this story with you today. Today on the podcast, we have SueAnn Graeber. If you know her, you know that she is just this joyful spirit, always has this smile. But what you might not know is there have been many things that she has had to overcome in her life, but she has this amazing story of God's work and miracles in her life. I can't wait to share it with you. But before we jump into the conversation with Miss SueAnn, I want to tell you about a couple of partners we have. It's the busy holiday season and medical decisions likely feel like the last thing on your mind. That's why Northeast Imaging wants to make this one choice easy for you for any MRI, CT, X-ray, and ultrasound needs you might have. Northeast Imaging is a patient-friendly diagnostic testing facility that is doctor trusted and patient preferred. They are located at 1703 Lemmy Lane here in Monroe. Their friendly staff provides high-quality scans focusing on the delivery of exemplary care to the patient and their referring providers. Whether you are using your health insurance or you're paying cash, Northeast Imaging is almost always more affordable than local hospitals. They're open Monday through Friday from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m., so mark that decision off your list and tell your healthcare provider you want to go to Northeast Imaging. All right, whether you are just running the roads with holiday errands or you're traveling outside of town to visit family for the holidays, you need to know about the Chevron's Loyalty Program app. You may have seen people talking on social media or just word of mouth of how they're saving money on gasoline. Well, this is how. It's super easy to set up, and new users will receive 25 cents off per gallon. Yes, per gallon, up to 25 gallons for the first 5 uses when you download the app. Plus, each time you use the app, you are earning 5 points per gallon that can be redeemed for future discounts ranging from 5 cents to 50 cents for future uses. You can even get additional in-store purchases for earning additional points. Right now, local users are saving about 13 cents per gallon. Best part is the app is completely free to download and very user-friendly. So, what are you waiting for? Go to the app store on your phone, type in Chevron Rewards, and download the Chevron app to start saving today. And now to my conversation with SueAnn Graeber. Welcome to the Saltworks podcast, Miss SueAnn.
Thank you.
I'm
Honored to be here.
Well, we're honored to have you. Thank you so much for coming. I know it's very nerve-wracking, one, to be recorded, but two, to share your story. That's just different than teaching even, which
Right.
I know you're used to teaching second grade girls,
Right.
but it's different with the cameras and the lighting but I'm so excited to get to hear your story
Thank
and
you.
share it.
Well, I
Thanks.
hope it'll help someone out there.
Oh, it will. It absolutely will. Well, we start off the episode by asking, for those who know you or don't know everything that you're involved in, who is SueAnn Graeber?
Well,
That's the hardest question, and then it gets easier.
yes, it is. Well, basically, I was a gymnast in college, and my first husband and I opened up Bayou Gymnastics
Yeah.
and had that for 47 years.
Wow.
And then retired for 3. And Kelsey Hankins pulled me back into her gym, Catalyst Gymnastics, and
Yeah.
I'm now coaching there.
I didn't realize that.
Yes, coaching there.
Awesome.
So
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it.
I bet.
And I have 2 boys.
Mm.
One was living in California for 21 years, and he just moved from LA to West Palm Beach, Florida. So that was a
Okay.
big
Yeah.
change
As
for
far as you
him.
can go.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
So, and Brian lives here on the same street. So my grandkids are right here.
That's awesome. I love it. Well, and you, this will, be parts of your story, but excuse me, you serve in a lot of different capacities too. Like I was reading through your notes and I didn't realize, but I know you teach second grade girls, as we mentioned, because you taught me.
Yes,
And
way back.
yeah, yes, not that way back, but but then also now you teach Garnet because she's in
Yes,
second grade.
yes, which is, I love that I taught moms and now I'm teaching their children.
So sweet. I love it. Um, I mean, I remember being in y'all's class, and then your Heart to Home Mom,
Yes.
which is, for
Yes.
people who aren't familiar, a women's, um, organized women's, I don't wanna say event,
Sort of.
but groups,
Yes.
small groups where there's Heart Moms and Heart Sisters, and you pour into those younger women and, that still have kids in the house, and,
Right. And
um
give them a night off and
yes,
Bible study, and
the best.
it,
It's the
it is
best.
great.
And you serve, with multiple ministries. I know Life Choices for years,
Hmm.
now the Vine,
Now the vine.
which we've talked about lots of times on the podcast, and, also Grace Place. So you're busy. You're busy. Do you know that
But
you're busy?
yes, but I love it. It's fun. I do. I enjoy Grace Place is great.
Yeah.
Just to see, I mean, how thankful they are too, going through the line. And
Mm,
yeah, it's amazing.
that's so neat. I love it. Um, you're someone that, I mean, as far back as I can remember being a kid, coming to Bayou Gymnastics for an event, or even the tumble bus, or
Right.
being in second grade life group or Sunday school at the time, that just exudes joy. I mean, you do, like, that's how I
Oh,
remember you as a kid, and that's how, I thought of you as an adult. I mean, you just are. Um, and so I say that to preface going into your story with, that was, I would say, joy that you fought for, because you have been through a lot of trials and a lot of hard things, and it's just a testament to
it
the
is.
Lord's work in your
Give
life.
him all the glory.
Mm,
Absolutely. Been faithful through every trial.
yeah. Mm. Can you take us back before we go into, as a young adult in those years, but can you take us back to childhood? Because I know there were some things there that were difficult. Can you just kind of paint for us that picture, that dynamic that you grew up with?
Hmm. Well, started out great family, mom, dad, and I have one sister,
Yeah.
and we always went down to West Virginia for our vacation because that's where my dad was from, and
Mhm.
got to see all the things on the East Coast as we went each year,
Yeah.
and it was great the whole time growing up. And
Yeah.
then in my high school years,
Mm.
my dad's job just got overwhelming, and he
Mm.
began to drink, and it got worse and worse and worse, and he became an alcoholic.
Mm.
Very bad when I went to college,
Yeah.
and the things I heard that were happening were horrible to my mom and sister.
Yeah.
And but my mom hung in there. Then finally, my sister went off to college,
Yeah.
and it was hard on the family. It was
Mm.
really hard. But I remember I was going to get married,
Yeah.
and I told my dad that I was not going to let him give me away, that I wanted
Mm.
my grandfather to do it because I just didn't trust him at the wedding.
Right.
And so I had told him that before I graduated college. So it was about 3 weeks, 4 weeks before we got married. And when I went home, he said, I've stopped drinking. And he
Wow.
did. My mom confirmed that. And so he gave me away.
Oh.
And the next day, he took us to the airport for us to go on our honeymoon, and went right to the airport bar. My mom said he was drunk by the time he got home.
Mm.
And then years went on, and he still drank. And then I ended up pregnant with my first baby, Brian,
Yeah.
and I wrote him this letter. And, I didn't know, I don't know, it's just something God told me to do.
Yeah.
I wrote all the wonderful memories I had as a child, everything I could think of, every place we went.
Mm.
And I told him that he would not see his grandchild until I had that man back.
Mm.
And I remember after my parents passed away and my sister and I were going through the house and everything, when I opened his top dresser drawer, that letter was still in there. But he read that letter, and my mom called me, and she said it really touched him.
Mm.
And he started talking to a priest. I mean, we grew up Methodist, but
Yeah.
he went and talked to this priest that he found, ended up going in rehab, and never drank again.
Wow.
So he got to see my kids.
That's amazing.
So, yeah, it
Man,
was.
what a story. And I have to say too, for the person that, I mean, like you set some necessary boundaries of like, I can't trust you to do this on my
Right,
wedding day. And when you're that person who would say that, it feels unkind, but it's not. Like you've been given the situation that you're like, I didn't
right,
pick this. I don't want this for you.
right.
But like also look how it changed his life, you know?
It did. Well, God
And
did for sure.
yeah, and the kindness to say, here's all the things I remember. You know, like you didn't
Mhm.
just camp on what the
Right.
previous years have looked like, but to go back and go like, I know this is who you are, and just
Yes,
the
not this other man.
right. Yeah.
So,
That's so beautiful. Um, wow. Now, at some point, um, you had a tumor in your throat, correct? Was that before you got married?
no,
No, it was after.
yes.
So
It was
you
like about in 83 or 84. So I
okay.
had 2 little boys.
Wow. Well, so when was it that you met your first husband, David?
In college,
Okay.
70, let me think, 69, 70.
Okay. And how did y'all meet?
Um, well, I went to school down there
Yeah.
in Louisiana.
Yeah.
I'm from New York.
Mhm.
And I just remember my coach going, "No, you need to go to Louisiana. This guy was the 64, 68 Olympic coach. He's going to be the 72 Olympic coach. You need to go down there." I was like, "Louisiana? Gosh, that's like really far
Yeah.
away."
Don't they have
And
alligators?
oh gosh, I was just really I didn't know one person, so I was
Yeah.
really scared to go. But went down, and the first night that after my parents left, I cried for 2 days while they were there.
Mm.
Finally, they left. It was awful, and, so I was in kind of the lobby of the dorm,
Mhm.
and some of the gymnasts came in. We were all in the same dormitory, so
Yeah.
one of the gymnasts were there, and this guy David came in with his friend Bob, and
Mhm.
so I met him then, and I thought, "Oh gosh, he's so cute." And, he just played hard to get for sure, and,
Mhm.
anyway, he ended up one night just asked me, he goes, "Would you wanna go see this movie?" And I was like, "Okay." So we just went, and that just started it.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
started dating in college.
Yeah. So fast forward, you're married, you have two young boys. Were they like really young when you
Yes,
realized you had a tumor?
Brian was 4 or 5, and Michael's like 2,
Yeah,
3.
goodness. So, probably barely sleeping,
Yes.
you know. Yeah. How did you discover that you had a tumor?
Well, I had taught a class, and, I was with Bobby Osterlin, a really
Yeah.
good friend. She taught with me for years,
Mm.
and we went to go eat lunch.
Yeah.
And we went to Johnny's and ordered a muffaletta. We hardly ever get that, but we ordered a muffaletta. And all of a sudden, I couldn't swallow it.
Mm.
And so I thought I had the bread caught in my throat or something, but it never went away. And then all of a sudden, I could not drink or anything. So I went to a doctor, went through all these tests,
Yeah.
and anyway, he said I went to Dr. Sarter, and he had surgery scheduled for a Thursday,
Mm.
and they were gonna cut me open across here, open my ribs, go
Wow.
up through the back of my esophagus to get this thing out,
Oh my
and it was
word.
about the size of a half dollar, it showed on the X-ray, and so, you know, who has time for this?
No,
I have 2
yeah.
little kids, a business we're trying to start and run, and
Can't
I just
imagine.
thought, "Lord, I can't do this. I don't know what to do,"
Yeah.
And so a lady that lived next door to us in an apartment, now we had both moved to houses,
Mhm.
and she found out about it, Sherry Betts, who still prays over people.
Mm.
She asked me to come to her house one afternoon, Sunday afternoon, and another lady was there, and they just laid hands on me and prayed and prayed and prayed.
Mm.
And the next morning I woke up, I could swallow. And I was like, "Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
surely, I mean, you healed me."
Yeah.
And so anyway, I called the doctor's office and the
Yeah.
nurse was like, "Well, let me talk to the doctor," very
Yeah.
doubtful, like it
Right.
must have shifted or something like that.
Yeah.
So he made me go through all these tests again and, the
Mm.
tube down your throat. And back then, they didn't put you to sleep.
Mm.
It was miserable. Then they sent me to Shreveport to have these tests done again.
Yeah.
And I just remember the first time when I went to the radiologist for the upper GI,
Mhm.
and you have to swallow that barium.
Yeah.
And of course, I could see it on the screen,
Yeah.
and then I came back and it was the same guy. It was at North Monroe Hospital. And I
Mm.
said, "I think God has healed me." He goes,
Mm.
"Well, they don't just go away." And I said, "Well, I really think God healed me."
Yeah.
And he was very doubtful. So
Mm.
anyway, we're doing the barium. And I said, You don't see it, do you? You don't see it. It's not there." And he
Mm.
goes, "It can't just go away." And
Mm.
so he said, "I'm going to make up a thicker barium and have you swallow that."
Oh,
So
word.
I swallowed that. And
Yeah.
long story short, God was faithful again
Wow.
and took it away. I've never had anything. And that was like 83, 84, and I've never had anything since.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
And the fact that we want to put God into a box and say, "Oh, that's he doesn't do that
Yes, or
anymore."
he can't. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. He still does miracles.
But also the bravery, like, it sounds so simple, I think, to be like, "No, I really think he did this," but that's not simple. That's really brave to look at a doctor and be like, I actually think you're not gonna find it," because you know what they're gonna respond with.
Yes.
Not all of them, but,
Yeah.
you know that
Right.
the natural
That it can't
science
go away.
right, yeah. What was their response when do you remember?
No, not really. I
Yeah.
mean, I remember that guy was
Yeah.
the radiologist
Yeah.
more than the doctor,
Right.
because mostly I talked to his
Yeah.
nurses and everything,
Yeah.
but surgery was canceled and,
That's amazing. Wow.
mm, he
Man.
was faithful.
Yes, he is. So we talked about you meeting David, and you have two boys. Can you tell us what you feel comfortable with as far as David's story and um, how that happened?
Yes, I had two little boys,
Yeah.
dad that was fabulous,
Mm-hmm.
great father.
Mm.
Uh, he taught Sunday school back then in the
Yeah.
church.
Yeah.
He was chairman of the deacons.
Mm.
Uh, everything was great. You think, what could possibly go wrong?
Mm.
And I got a phone call. We had a gym in West Monroe also, and I got a phone call at the gym that something had happened to him
Mm.
and to go home right away. So I was like, what? All the way home, I prayed. I didn't know what in the world was going on.
Mm.
And as I look back, so many things God did
Yeah.
through this.
Yeah.
Um, his sister lived in town, and we didn't do a lot with her. Just they lived, they had their group of friends, and we
Mm-hmm.
had ours. We had Thanksgiving and Christmas together all the time.
Yeah.
But and my boys, thank the Lord, almost never sick. Well, that day, Michael got sick at school and called his aunt. He
Mm.
never calls her for anything, always calls me or David,
Yeah.
and called her. She was at the house when I got home with Michael, and Tom Middleton was the principal where Brian Washita Jr., where Brian was going to school,
Mm-hmm.
and he found out and brought him home.
Mm.
So in the meantime, this policeman comes to my house, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, what in the world did he
Mm-hmm.
do?" And he said, "I'm so sorry, but we found," because I said, "I know," and he said, "Well, we found him dead in his car." Well, no, that I did not know.
Mm.
And he said he has committed suicide, and
Mm.
I just ugh, can't even describe the shock,
No.
the pain, the unreal. This can't be happening. I'm dreaming. Something's not right. And I just remember backing up and saying, "No, no," and getting louder and backing up. And I backed through the kitchen into the living room. And then I saw Michael, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh. And about
Mm.
that time, Brian got home. And, it was just like a dream for so many weeks, not
Mm.
real.
Yeah.
And, you feel like you need that circle of friends. So I did have the church, and my life group was so wonderful.
Mm.
And I had Carol and Mike Fuller, who lived
Yeah.
on one side, Tom and Alice Middleton, who lived on the other side. And, for weeks, I just wanted to sit in his closet and wear his clothes, smell his aftershave, just sit there
Mm.
and remember and wonder why in the world did this happen. I was so mad at God, and
Yeah.
why would you allow this to happen?
Yeah.
These two little boys, what are they going to do? I have a business. I don't even know how to turn on a computer that just came out. It was
Mm.
it was not good. And Carol and Alice just really helped me to get back out and do things. And I remember just saying my verse, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And that's what I've held on to. That's what I've told the boys. That's what I
Yeah.
tell all my gymnasts before we compete or if they can't do something. So that's been my life's verse. But, you know, you do get through it,
Yeah.
and by God's grace.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it never goes away,
No.
never goes away. He'll always be right here
Yeah.
forever. And my boys had a hard time,
Yeah.
really hard time with it. Brian kind of shut down.
Yeah.
Michael turned to drugs.
Mm.
So that's another whole story.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was very hard. But, things did get better.
Mm.
And, you get through it knowing God's there for you.
Yeah. I do I do want to talk about Michael as well, but I want to ask, how did you ask the questions of why and not just drown in those? Do you feel like you ever got answers of why he made that choice, and that familiar question of why did God allow this? Like, how did you wrestle with those and come
It
back
took a
out?
long time. I mean, I was really mad at
Yeah.
God for a long time
Yeah.
to, like, what am I going to do with these two little boys?
Yeah.
But I had those two little boys, so I
Yeah.
had to
Right.
take care of them. I
Mm.
couldn't just
Right.
abandon them and stay in the closet.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think through the church, my life group,
Yeah.
um, I even had one man, Mike Walker, who argued with the police forever. I know this man, there's no way he would do this. I think he was shot. I don't think this happened. You need to reinvestigate and all
Mm.
this. But I don't know. I just think having that group
Mhm.
of people to help you through it, and uh, just
Mhm.
more Bible studies and
Yeah.
reading the word just, gave me
Mhm.
more and more comfort to know, no, he didn't do this to me. This was David's choice.
Yeah.
And, uh, you know,
He's gonna be
I
my
did
strength
find
through it.
out later that we knew his dad uh, was bipolar.
Mm.
And, they said you should test all your children because it is hereditary.
Mm.
Well, who thinks you are?
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
we were in our 30s. Who thinks that?
And bipolar's hard because if I understand it correctly, it looks different and different. It can have like some people can have manic episodes, some people
Right,
have depressive episodes,
right,
and so it doesn't always manifest itself in a
right.
way that goes, "Oh yeah, I've seen this." You know?
Yes. And no, no one saw that in
No.
him at all. And it just happened.
Mm.
And
Yeah. I can't imagine the strength that took, but I know, like, I mean, that just attests to the faith and trust that you had in your God,
well,
you
he
know?
was good.
Yeah.
I remember Carol Fuller kept telling me too, nothing's impossible with God. Nothing's impossible. You're
Mhm.
going to get through this.
And that question, well, that statement, I should say, is so, so hard when you see the improbability in front of you. Like, there's no way this tumor can be, there's no way I
Right.
can come out of this. And like, we just sometimes all we can see is the improbability, but that it's true. There is nothing
Right.
impossible, and
Hmm.
sometimes it is just meditating on that one truth.
Right.
Mm. Um, and I want to say this too, just
Mm.
the impact it is to have someone else say that when you cannot,
Right.
to hold up your shield of faith when you physically can't in that
Right.
season is just so
Well, I do remember
impactful.
Tommy Lee at our church, who has
Yeah.
passed away,
Yeah.
and Jonelle Jones, now Brindle, but
Yeah.
back then it was Jones. And both of them kept sending me letters and little
Mhm.
notes should they give me a church. And,
Yeah.
all of that helped a lot.
It really does. I think when you're penning that letter, you don't know, is this going to help?
Right.
But when you receive it,
Right. It really did.
it's at the moment you need it too.
Yes, it's amazing.
It is. That's how sovereign he is overall.
Hmm.
Um, so at this, so you're dealing with that unspeakable grief and all these questions and how do I do this business? And also how do I help these boys who are going through the
Hmm.
same grief but different than
Right.
mine? Um, and Michael um, was leaning into drugs. So how did that look? And what did that season look like for you
Well,
as a mom?
after, right before that, Richie,
Yeah.
who I'm married to now,
Yes.
uh,
Love
it's a
Mr.
whole
Ritchie.
fairy tale of what God did
Yeah.
for me
Yeah.
and the boys. But Michael was acting out a lot
Hmm.
after that, not in drugs yet. And
Yeah.
Richie came down to see how I was doing.
Yeah. And how
About
did y'all know each other before?
Okay, so Richie and I
Yeah.
went to high school together,
Yeah.
did a lot of stuff together. Never
Hmm.
dated, but just did lots of stuff. He was like one of my best friends, almost like my brother that I never had.
Yeah.
And actually, he was in my wedding when David and I got married.
Yeah.
And the groomsmen from Louisiana stayed with Richie and his parents.
That's funny.
And so, we stayed close. And
Yeah.
Richie came down at least once a year
Mm.
just to visit with me. So he knew both of my boys really
Yeah.
well. And we had gone to New York with the boys like one
Hmm.
Christmas and vacation in the summer. And so we always saw him then.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, he kept coming down and visiting. And then he asked one time, well, he was living now in Washington, well, right outside of Washington, D.C., in
Hmm.
Virginia. And he asked me to come up. And I was just like, oh, I can't go up there.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, he said, well, why don't you invite two of your friends and their kids or whatever? And we'll do
Hmm.
a big tour of D.C. and New York.
That's so
So I
fun.
did. I invited two friends. They had boys. So we fly there. He toured us
Mhm.
all around and they kept saying, "Oh, SueAnn, I think there's something here." And I was like, "No, he's like my brother. No, it's not going to happen." Well, God made this little fairy tale happen and we
Mm,
ended up getting married. And
that's so neat.
so, yes, so God definitely was faithful there because I'm not independent and just want to be by myself. I have to have people. I
Yeah.
need people.
Yeah. We
And
all do if
so
we're
that helped.
honest. Yeah.
That helped tremendously.
Yeah.
And then Michael by that time started into drugs and actually the doctor said he was ADHD, so that
Mm,
we needed to put him on Ritalin. And so we did all that. And, it was not good. And he
mm,
just ended up getting into other stuff. And so it lasted for about 6.5 years. And
yeah.
not good at all, and God just stayed faithful as I look back.
Mm,
I kept saying, "Just heal him, just get him out of it."
yeah.
But the entire time, so many places he was that he should not have been, God protected him.
Yeah.
Nothing ever happened to him, and, eventually he got out of it, and
Mm,
uh, that's a whole miracle story in
yeah.
itself.
It is.
My One day we had an argument, And he said, I'm going to go and do what Dad did.
Mm.
And he left. That was on a Thursday. Never came home Friday, never came home Saturday. I am
Mm.
like in a panic.
Mm.
And so I drove, never been there before, never been since, but I drove to the place where they told me they found David
Mm.
just to see if he
Yeah.
had gone there.
Yeah.
And it was, he did it at the garbage dump.
Mm.
And so Michael was not there. So I
Yeah.
just sat in my car and prayed, let him be okay wherever he is.
Mm.
And, just keep a hedge of protection around
Yeah.
him. And so, anyway, I called my sister. She's a Christian counselor.
Mm.
I called her. I don't know what to do. So she prayed with me, and it'll be okay. He's going to be okay. He's going to come home. And so that night, every Sunday night, she did a Bible study with a group of college kids.
Mm.
And this girl walks in who they've never seen before. I know God sent her.
Mm.
Never seen before, and asked if she could give her testimony. And she did. She was on drugs. She went to Teen Challenge, and she wanted to help people. Well, she called me immediately and
Yeah.
said, can you come out here with Michael and let her talk to him? So it took about 2 months, and finally he said he would go. So
Yeah.
anyway, we went out to California. Well, the first time we went out to California and he met her.
Yeah.
Of course, go to California. I'll go to
Yeah.
California. So we went there, stayed with my sister, and
Mhm.
we set up this thing that he didn't know about. And we went to met her at a teen challenge, and she talked to him, and they went off by themselves. She explained everything to him and how it just totally changed her life.
Mm.
So it took 2 months before I could get him there, October 15th. And we went out and I put him in. And, he's supposed to stay a year
Yeah.
because they say that it doesn't work. If
Mm.
you're 3 months, it just does not change you.
Yeah.
And so you have to commit to a year.
'Cause there's, like, healing in the brain too
And
that takes,
yes,
that
everything.
long, yeah.
And then they told him, you can't have any phone calls or mail the first month.
Mm.
Well, then, I got to thinking, oh my gosh, did I put him in some kind of cult? And when
Yeah.
my sister and I went, and when we left, I mean, I was hysterical, crying,
Yeah.
like, oh, please, Lord, let this be of you and not
Mhm.
some weird cult.
Yeah.
But it was great. So he
Mhm.
stayed a year. Then he decided you have the choice to go to like a halfway house, or you can go to Teen Challenge Ministry Institute, which is a year.
Mm.
And they just, almost like make a minister of you for
Yeah.
that year. And he ended up getting the Christ Award at the end of
Wow.
that year. And then he went to school, got his degree. Then
Yeah.
he decided to go to seminary
Mm.
and graduated with his master's from Talbot Seminary out there.
That's
And
amazing.
he got a job for a while as a youth minister. Then he taught PE classes at the college at Biola, Bible Institute of Los Angeles. And for the past, I don't know, 15 years, 10 years, he's been teaching Bible in
Wow.
Christian schools. So
I mean,
God is faithful again.
could you fathom it looking that way
No,
when
not
you were
as
like, "I don't even know if I can get
just
him to
totally
California."
right, right.
Man.
Yes, and so God was faithful and took care of him all that time, and
Yeah.
bringing that girl
Yes.
into that Bible study. I mean, all of it.
Well, and even your faith to
Uh,
leave him, like, I don't know, I
right,
mean,
that
that's
was
really, really
scary.
hard because as a parent, we wanna control, we wanna know.
Right.
We wanna know all the ins and outs and, like, we can't
Yeah, and they don't.
always.
In fact, we brought a suitcase and a
Yeah.
hang-up bag, and the guy goes, "Hey, people come in here with paper bags. He can't bring all that." And I was
Wow.
just like, "Okay."
Yeah.
But I did find out, which is nice, that no one at Teen Challenge can work there as a counselor,
Mhm.
as a repairman, nothing, unless you have gone through Teen Challenge
Wow.
or a rehab place.
Yeah.
You have to have had that problem so that everybody understands what each person's going through.
Isn't that
And
wild?
it was totally Christ based. And
Mm.
so it was a good thing.
Yeah. Is that still going? Like, do
Yes.
they still have
Mhm,
that? Yeah.
mhm.
Wow.
Yeah,
I haven't
I
heard of
found
it.
out they had some at the time, I think down in New Orleans or somewhere,
Okay.
and they had some in Texas, but
Oh,
I was just so afraid he'd call a friend and
right.
they'd
Yeah.
come get him because, if you say, "I'm leaving," they
Mhm.
can't hold you there,
Right.
but they say you need a year
Yeah.
to get it all out of your system. In fact, they
Mhm.
had one thing, at least he wasn't on real hard drugs, but
Mm.
that for them that had to go through detox and all of
Yeah.
that. And they have this sidewalk, and they
Mhm.
call that the River Jordan, and you get to cross over and
Mm.
go into this other dormitory once you've gone through all
Wow.
that. So yeah, it's
It's beautiful.
everything is
Yeah.
yeah.
I know some different rehabs won't, like, if there are multiples in the country, they won't let you go to the one that's closest to home. Like, some
Oh
of them won't
yes,
let for those same
that
reasons,
is
and
yes,
that's
it's a good
so
reason.
true. And then you said he stayed in California for
Yes,
until
21
recently.
years.
Yeah. Wow. Man, that is truly amazing. Um, okay, moving into Brian, because you felt like he
Mm,
kind of closed in.
he did.
Um, and I don't know if you want to talk about that or want to share his story, but I know there was an accident at some point, and I feel like I should know the story, and I really don't know much about it. I know some of the basics,
Yeah.
but what happened with that?
Well, he had gone one Wednesday night to
Mhm.
church, um, and the youth minister was having them write letters to ones that had not, little notes to ones that
Mhm.
had not been there in a while.
Yeah.
So he was with Carol Fuller's son, Pete,
Mm.
and they were doing it. So when they left the room that they were doing it on, they
Mhm.
ran down the hall to go to the gym, which in our church is now the East Worship
Right.
Center. So he went to go out those double doors there, and he hit with his left hand, he hit part of the door and his arm on the window, right arm. So his arm went right through the glass. And when he pulled it back, it was like an ice cream scoop at his wrist and
Ugh.
right at his elbow.
Mm.
So he severed this main artery,
Oh my
which was,
goodness.
of course, spurting blood everywhere.
Yeah.
And so the youth minister called me and said, Brian's going to need some stitches, is all he said, which I was coaching the team. And I
Yeah.
was so mad because this child had so many stitches. When he was like 10 or 12, he had already had 12 sets of stitches in his face.
Oh my
And I
word.
kept saying, this is such a bad advertisement for me as
Yeah.
a gymnastic teacher. My son can't put his hands down. But anyway, I got to the church. He was laying on the floor right close to what's now our chapel
Mm.
and or Kidstown.
Yeah.
And he was just in a pool of blood all the way around. And I was
Mm.
just like, I couldn't even tell where he was cut. I mean, there was
Yeah.
just blood everywhere. I thought it was his head. And this lady who was like 8 months pregnant had his legs and were holding it up. Her husband had taken his shirt off and tied a tourniquet
Yeah.
around his arm. And right as I got there, the ambulance was right behind me. And so they came in and started working on him and everything. And they said, we've got to get him right away. So one guy said, are we going to the trauma center at St. Francis? He goes, he won't make it. And I was like, what?
Mm.
And so they said, no, we're going to North Monroe,
Mm.
and your job is to keep him awake.
Mm.
And Brian kept saying to me all the way there, don't let him take my arm. Don't let him take my arm. I was just like, gosh. And I'm not a nurse. Oh my goodness, I am not a nurse. I
Yeah.
can't look at anything, touch anything. But you talk about God just taking care of me and
Mm.
letting me be there, look at, do whatever I had to do.
Mm.
So God already starts
Mm.
his being there. Becky Hutchison, who still goes to our
Mhm.
church,
Yeah.
was not on call that night. The lady on call could not come. They called Becky and said, could you please go to North Monroe?
Yeah.
And so she said she pulled onto Fink's Hideaway Road and said, Lord, it's somebody I know. I can tell. And she
Wow.
got there, and of course, some of my friends were there, and they told her it was Brian King.
Mm.
And I call her my angel to this day. it was, oh, I don't know, 7, 8 hour surgery, and she kept calling me from the operating room to let me know on a certain phone, to let
Yeah.
me know what was going on. Because when I left him, I did pass out
Oh my goodness.
at one point, but
I can
when I
imagine.
left him, his arm was black.
Oh,
And they told me he had lost 6 pints of blood on the floor, and I think you only have, like, 8 or something. So, he
yeah.
had to have blood and all of that going on. Well, when the doctor finally came out, well, she called me at one point and said, "SueAnn, his arm is starting to
Mm.
get color again." And I just remember I had to go in that hospital and find a hall all by myself.
Yeah.
Just sat down and just thank God for that, and
Yeah.
oh, to please get him through this,
Yeah.
and if you can save his arm, please save his arm, but please save him.
Yeah.
And so, long story short, we had to wait 72 hours to see if he could save his arm, that they knew he could save him.
Mm.
And when the doctor came out of surgery, he told me that this area had so many nerves cut and everything that he was not going to be able to have use of all his fingers. He wouldn't be able to move them
Mm.
and have no feeling of hot or cold. And I was just like, but he can keep his arm. And he just said,
Yeah.
we're going to have to wait 72 hours to make sure. Well, he kept his arm. He has full use of all 5 fingers, which is totally impossible
Yeah.
without God. Oh, sorry.
Mm.
So that was such a blessing.
Yeah.
And he had to have several other surgeries where they had to take veins out of his leg and put them in his arm, and then had to go to Shreveport for another surgery for something. And the other miracle is the doctor that did the main surgery,
Mhm.
was new in town. And so, anyway, insurance, they weren't going to pay everything.
Yeah.
So I went to the doctor and I just said, how can I pay this? Because I
Yeah.
can't just pay all this money, and, just a little bit at a time, or how can I do it?
Yeah.
And he said, "You know what? This was not me. This was God, and you don't owe me anything."
Wow.
So that was another God thing. And
That is
then
crazy.
he was gone. He was no longer in Monroe.
Mm.
So I don't know, but I feel like that was another angel he just sent for that time that he knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
And so, Brian has lots of scars, but he has his arm full use, everything
Mm.
still hot and cold, or, he doesn't know
Yeah.
hot and cold as much. But
Yeah.
yeah,
That is
another miracle where
insane.
he
Yeah.
definitely was faithful, and I can look back and see all the things that he
Mm.
was doing during it.
Wow. Immeasurably
Whew.
more than we could ask or
Oh,
imagine.
absolutely.
If, when, what was, okay, so timeline wise, where was Michael during this? Was he still home, or how was he in?
He was still on drugs.
Yeah.
um, and yes, all that was going on all at the same
That's what
time.
I was
Mhm.
wondering. I mean, how were you with Mr. Ritchie at the time?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah,
How
bless his heart. I mean, he came to the South and didn't speak our language, and, 2 teenage boys and all of this. This
how
was the first
did
year we
you
were married.
do this? How did you do this with
Ah,
both of these things going on at the same time?
I would say that same circle of friends.
Yeah.
Uh, my close friends, family, uh, and my life group,
Mm.
and the Lord. I mean, he was the center of each one of those circle of friends that I had. And,
Yeah.
he just stayed faithful. And I kept saying to myself, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And
Mm.
he did,
Yeah.
enough, because I don't feel like I'm a strong person. I'm not out
Well,
there. And,
your story would say otherwise.
well, uh, but yeah, I give all the praise
Mm.
and glory to the Lord, because he was with me even when I didn't know it.
Yeah.
I feel like just like that song says, he never stops working.
Mhm.
He never stops working, and he's always with us.
Yeah. Well, and that is why I wanted to start the episode. For those who know you, they don't need to hear me say, "Oh, you just exude joy," because they know that. That's the
I
first
like to
thing anyone
party.
would
I like
write
to
down.
have parties.
Hence the second grade girls. But when you hear your story, you're like, man, she has had to walk through a lot of tragedy and a lot of hardships. But really, what your story is it's a string of miracles.
It is.
And like
It
without God,
is.
it is tragedy, but with Him, it's miracles.
It is. It's
And
amazing. I mean, I'm still amazed,
yeah,
even saying it today, all that he did,
yeah,
all in every circumstance.
that's what is so powerful to me about getting to hear other people's stories. Because when have we
Right.
let's just talk about your story on a Sunday
Right.
morning when we
You
pass,
don't
and
do that.
you don't,
Right.
but like, I mean, it is bolstering my faith real time, but for even for you retelling it, or
Hmm.
for other people saying, "Well, I didn't realize that," or "I knew you then, but I didn't know that was going on."
Yeah.
It's amazing. Now, at some point, you lost your parents, and your
I
note
did.
said 30 days apart from each
Hmm.
other from cancer. I mean,
Yes.
tell us about that season. How did you cope with grief with that?
Well, I knew for a while that they both had cancer and had
Yeah,
gone out. They were living in California now. They had moved to California.
yeah,
And so I knew that they both had it.
mm,
And we'd been out there a couple of times to visit.
yeah,
And then I was supposed to go again in August. And my sister called me in June. She goes, "You got to get out right now. Right now, you got to come today."
mm,
So we did, flew out there right away. And my mom was just, she weighed 60 pounds
mm,
and she had lung cancer. She did smoke her whole life.
mm.
And, you know,
Yeah. Well, but I mean, nobody knew. I mean,
back then, yeah,
yeah,
everybody smoked in that
right.
era. But so 4 days later, she
Mm,
died. But God gave me those 4 days to, stay by her side.
mm, mm.
We read Psalms to her
Yeah.
and, just talked her through it till she left. And then someone told me, this pastor out there said you might need to tell her she can go.
Mm,
And so my sister and I were there one night and told her we were okay and she could go and, she needs to
mm,
go and meet Jesus. And she did. She went that night.
mm,
And then my dad had liver and pancreatic cancer.
mm,
And I'm sure that was from drinking.
mhm.
But he had it for 7 years.
Wow.
Another miracle because people don't have that for that long.
Right.
But he stayed to take care of my mom, I
Mm,
know, because after she died and the funeral was over, um, he just went down.
yeah.
I mean, very quickly. So I felt like I couldn't leave.
Yeah.
So I ended up staying out there for 9 weeks and I could get coverage, in my
Mm,
gymnastics school for my classes. And my sister was a Christian counselor. She really needed to be there.
yeah.
And so she went to work and I stayed with my dad,
Mhm,
those 4 weeks. And then he passed away exactly
mm,
30 days. She died June 30th. He died August 30th.
mm.
So they, both passed away a month apart. And, it sounds awful that you lost both of your parents, but really it was a blessing
Yeah.
because you sort of only went through it one time.
Mm,
And I lived so far away
yeah.
that I was able to be there for my dad,
Right.
when my mom died and to help him
Yeah.
through those last 4 weeks. So,
And not leaving him alone to
oh,
cope with grief.
yes,
That I
yes,
can't imagine that either. Um,
yes. So that ended up being a blessing.
yeah. Um, I mean, so much of your story is the Lord did this, the Lord did this. And there have been times where it's like you couldn't miss that
Right.
this tumor was there and now it's not.
Right.
But I also think that like you are someone who isn't going to miss the miracle, and therefore like it's not wasted on you, because I think
Yeah.
sometimes we can come to life with cynicism and skepticism, and it's like, have there been miracles and we've missed them? But you come so trusting and so, I'm putting this in your hands and I know this is you, and you don't, I mean, even for you to look at that and say the way this happened was a blessing. I think that there is a level of faith that you have in the Lord
Mm.
that has brought the joy, because you do see all the things that he's doing that we can miss, and the loss and the
Right.
hard,
Right.
we can overlook that. I just think that's encouraging to me.
Well, and how much you grow
Yeah.
in those trials,
Yeah.
how much, you see how faithful he is, and, it just grows your faith,
Right.
to believe, yeah,
Right.
nothing is impossible with you. And,
That's right.
we just all have to go through trials,
Yeah.
he tells us that.
Yeah. Um it makes me think of that verse that consider all trials opportunities for great joy. I don't know if I said that exactly right, but in
Yes,
James,
yes, and right,
because it's like how you walk through it. If Are you looking for the hands of God? Are you looking for the things he's doing? Are you leaning into him and depending on him? That's an opportunity for joy later. And like that's
yes,
so evident in your story, because when you came upon another shocking phone call, you've seen him do.
be faithful.
Yes.
Yes.
And so there's this level of that has become this great joy in your story, because you have not missed it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Feel like you can trust him for sure.
Yeah. There's one part of your story that we have saved for last. It's, I don't want to speak for you, probably one of the hardest
It
things
is.
to
It
talk
is.
on, and we're kind of going back and forth about, do you want to? Because the truth is, we don't. He doesn't call us to share every part of our story all the time, and but you came in today and you felt, um I don't know if the word would be encouraged or fortified to share this, and I don't
Right.
know if you want to share that story too, but also the part that we have saved.
Right. I guess the easiest way is just to say it. When I
Yeah.
was 19, David and I were engaged, and he was going to drive me home to New York from Louisiana.
Mm.
And it was so far, we decided we had to stop halfway.
Yeah.
And, what your mom said is it only takes one time. You better believe her.
Yeah.
And anyway, I ended up getting pregnant. And it was in May because he had driven me home from school.
Mm.
And I didn't, I didn't have my period for a couple of months. And so I was panicking. And my mother goes, "Do we have anything to worry about?"
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yes." And so we went to the doctor, and
Mm.
yes, I was pregnant.
Mm.
So I called David, and he talked to his parents, and I talked to mine, and there was no question you were getting an abortion.
Mm.
Nobody asked me anything.
Mm.
You're on the gymnastic team, you're going to school, you've got to finish. So we got to do this. And so when I talked to David, he said his parents said the same thing. And now I think, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
my goodness. I mean, even my grandparents said, I think this is the best thing. And
Mm.
I've just always looked up to them. And,
Yeah.
now I think, if there's anybody else, think about it. Let somebody ask you, what do you want to do? Because no one asked me that.
Mm.
And it's a horrible experience. You go into this building and, they don't ask you anything. You fill out this form and they do it. You come out and they gave me a cookie and that was it.
Mm.
And, I didn't know ever if I would tell anybody. I held it in. I told it last year for the first time. So
Wow.
I held it for 53 years
Yeah.
and never told anybody. And Bethany Wilson
Yeah.
at the Vine, so precious. I worked at Life Choices and all that, thinking, you know, this will take away all that pain and shame
Yeah.
and guilt, but no, it doesn't.
Mhm.
And anyway, Bethany, I went to one of her things in West Monroe where she spoke and gave
Yeah.
her testimony. And while I was sitting there, we were doing praise and worship. And, sometimes I tear up for
Mhm.
something. I mean, for every song we sang, I
Yeah.
was crying like crazy. Carol Fuller was with me and she goes, "Are
Mm.
you okay?" And I don't know. I don't know why I am this upset.
Yeah.
And then Bethany gave her testimony,
Mhm.
and she was saying that 1 in 3 women
Yeah.
have had an abortion, and somebody who's had one, and they've just not said anything.
Mm.
And now I'm like
Yeah.
crying.
Yeah.
And so after she finished and came down, everybody hugged her and everything. And I went up to her and I just said, "I'm 1 in 3."
Mm.
And I said, "It's the first time I've ever said it."
Yeah.
And anyway, I just asked her not to say anything
Yeah.
because I have to tell my boys first. I don't want them to hear this from anybody else. And she's absolutely. So I had called Brian and asked him if he could come at a certain time, called Michael, didn't know how to Zoom, don't know how to do anything. I'm
Yeah.
just no technology at all. So Brian set everything up and we Zoomed with Michael, and I told them they were very kind, compassionate, understanding. And Michael, it was so funny. They thought I had cancer. And then I called in all my friends, close
Yeah.
friends, same thing. One of them said, "I thought you had cancer. That's why you wanted us here." And
Yeah.
asked Brian's wife, Rachel, to come in
Yeah.
and told them. And I was going to the retreat that was coming up
Yeah.
and debated on, now it's like a whole bunch of people,
Mhm.
lots that I don't know, do I
Mhm.
really want to reveal this?
Yeah.
But through the retreat, I got just hearing the Holy Spirit tell me to do it.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if I was going to say it today,
Yeah.
but I was with a group of ladies this week. And while I was sitting there, I just felt him telling me to say that.
Mhm.
And I thought, no, I'm not saying that. I'm going to ask him to pray for me Thursday,
Yeah.
that I'll have strength to get through
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. To
And
record. Yeah.
yes, yeah, the recording part.
Yeah.
And anyway, they were all real nice. And then at the end, it just came out. I told them the whole story.
Mm.
And so anyway, people were leaving and everything. And so I was leaving to go out to my car, and this lady came out of her car and said, "I'm 1 in 3." And I've
Wow.
never said that to anybody. I've never told one person that I had an abortion.
Mm.
And she said, "You just helped me so much." So I thought, ugh,
Yeah.
if that can help in the small group of people, if that can help one person already,
That's right.
I need to tell the story. And so that's why I decided to tell it. And, I thought too, way back, I'm going to be punished for this now.
Mm. Mm.
And David and I waited, I was on birth control, and David and I waited uh, to have children like 5 years,
Mm.
and so then when I tried to get pregnant, I got pregnant
Mhm.
and I had a miscarriage. And I
Mm.
said, "He's not going to let us have children.
Mm.
We did this and he's not going to let us."
Yeah.
But he's not like that. And I have 2 healthy boys.
That's right.
And so he was faithful again. And,
Yeah.
what Satan meant for evil, God meant for good, for
That's
sure.
right. That's right.
And, he's just helped me through this now.
Mm.
So I
Well,
hope that there's somebody out there, you tell your story, because it does let all that guilt and shame off that you hold in.
that's what I wanted to ask you. Like all of those things that the grace, the blood of Christ, it covers you
Mm,
and has covered you all of these years. But what do you
absolutely.
have to say to the person that's like, why does it really matter if I say it? why does it really matter if I tell somebody? I know this is true. Why is confession so powerful?
Well, I thought it didn't matter,
Mm-hmm.
obviously,
Yeah.
all these years. And, of course, I've asked several
Mm-hmm.
times to forgive me for what I've done. And I feel like he has, years
Mm-hmm.
ago. I felt,
Mm-hmm.
I have been forgiven for that.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's kind of like those chains that they do on a
Yeah.
skit at the retreat.
Yeah.
You really do have them.
Yeah.
And they are broken. Once you can tell your story, it's like I'm not
Mm-hmm.
hiding it anymore. And
Yeah.
hopefully, it will help somebody else to be able to have that guilt and shame
Mm-hmm.
out, because now I'm not hiding it.
That's
You
right.
know,
Yeah.
you let it go.
It's amazing. I
And I
can.
read yesterday when I was still debating,
Yeah.
let me see if I say it exactly right. Proverbs 28:13. If you hide your sins, you will not succeed.
Mm.
I was like, okay, I'm definitely with these two things this week, I'm definitely gonna
Wow. I can
let it
remember.
go.
I think Bethany would feel okay with me saying this, but I can remember the first time she was sharing her testimony. It was at a retreat, and it was the first time she was really sharing it, that part of it. And I went to check on her and, pray for her and encourage her. And I knew it, what she was going to share. And she looked at me and she was about to step up at the microphone. And she said, everyone's going to hate me. And I think
Yeah,
that is what we feel.
right.
That
That's
is
why
what.
you don't say anything for all those
Yes.
years.
And it's crazy. Like your whole self can believe, like, I know the Lord's forgiven me. And every time these feelings come up, I take this to the Lord. But then your whole self can be like, but I don't know if anyone else would,
Yeah,
and there's this beautiful thing that happens because that didn't happen in Bethany's story. And it's not going to happen in yours
right,
either. That, and I want to speak right now for everyone listening in, because I know they're thinking the same thing, is thank you for sharing that, because somebody does need to hear that. And even if that isn't the confession that they have something they feel like they can't say,
right, right. You
and
think you're the only one, but you're not.
yes, yeah, and just the strength and the courage that imparts to people listening. And so thank you
Oh,
so much. And of course, when Bethany stepped off the stage and no one had that reaction, but everybody, hugged her and
yes,
loved on her and all of these things. It's this picture of, even though it's seeing the love of
right.
Christ,
And the restoration that
right.
God gives you.
Yes. But thank you so
Mhm.
much for sharing that. I
Yeah.
know that was hard. Yeah. But I know without a doubt in my mind that someone, if not many people, need to hear that. And I know that what that costs to say it, but thank you.
Okay.
Well, Miss SueAnn, it was so good. It was so
Well,
powerful.
thank you.
Um, I mean, just the thread of faith that you had, the strength, the constant surrender you lived in with the Lord. It's really encouraged me today. So
Oh,
thank
good.
you so much. And thanks for
Thank you.
coming.
Well, thank you for having me.
It was wonderful. And thank y'all so much for listening in to the Saltworks. We will see you next week.
This is my story. This is your story.